Okay, let's start. Number 1. The Indus Valley Civilization. The year is 2500 BCE. You are walking through a city of 40,000 people. The streets are straight. They run on a perfect grid, north to south and east to west, with drainage channels cut into the center of every lane. Every house you pass has a bathroom, not a pit, not a hole scratched into the earth, but a brick-lined room with a toilet connected to a covered sewer running beneath the street. The sewer has inspection hatches. Workers maintain it. It functions. You are in Mohenjo-daro, in what is now Pakistan. London will not build a sewage system until 1875. You are 4,375 years ahead of the British Empire. The Indus Valley Civilization flourished from approximately 3,300 to 1,300 BCE across a territory larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. Its twin capitals, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, housed tens of thousands of people in cities that were planned, not grown. Archaeologist John Marshall, directing the first major excavations for the Archaeological Survey of India beginning in 1924, documented what he described as a degree of civic organization unmatched by any civilization of the era. The streets ran on deliberate axes. The buildings followed standardized setbacks, and the bricks across 1,500 miles of Indus territory, from city to city, generation to generation, conformed to a uniform ratio of 1 to 2 to 4. The same dimensions, the same proportions, everywhere. That doesn't happen without central authority enforcing manufacturing standards across a region the size of Western Europe. Then there is the Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro. A rectangular pool, 39 feet long and 8 feet deep, sealed at the base with natural bitumen to prevent seepage, surrounded by colonnaded galleries, fed by dedicated freshwater supply, and drained by a dedicated outlet into the main sewer network. Shireen Ratnagar, writing in Paleorient in 2000 on the Harappan tradition's collapse, noted that no identifiable palace, royal tomb, throne room, or weapons cache has ever been found in these cities. A civilization more sanitary than Victorian London, apparently organized without kings, no monuments to rulers, no mass burial pits from war, no evidence of conquest from within or without. Around 1900 BCE, the cities were abandoned, not burned, not conquered, not buried under debris from flood or earthquake. Left. People packed what they carried and walked out, and they did not come back. A century of excavation has found no plague evidence, no mass graves, no ash layers from fire. The most advanced urban civilization on Earth at that moment vanished without leaving an explanation. The mainstream view attributes the collapse to climate change and river, shifts the drying of the Ghaggar-Hakra river system that fed the region. But that explanation accounts for the physical cause, without accounting for the cultural one. Not a single monument, inscription, or written record commemorates what these cities were. The Indus script remains undeciphered. We cannot read what they wrote about themselves, and whoever came after them showed no interest in preserving what they'd built. 4,000 years of accumulated urban knowledge, sanitation, city planning, standardized industry disappeared so completely that the cities were buried under 30 feet of silt before anyone thought to look. What were they afraid of? Where did they go? And who decided the record should stay buried? Number 2. The Minoans. The year is 1700 BCE. You are a guest in the palace of Knossos on the island of Crete. You walk through a colonnaded courtyard and up a staircase that rises through 5 stories ventilated by light wells. Open shafts cut through every floor to channel daylight and cool air from the roof down through the building. Your room has a ceramic bathtub. There is a toilet connected to a drainage system with a wooden seat. Turn a valve, and water flows from a cistern above. Hot water, piped from a hearth-heated tank. An earthquake moved through the island last spring and brought down half the buildings in the nearest town. The palace shook. It did not fall. It absorbed the force. This was not luck. It was engineering. The Minoan civilization occupied Crete and a network of Aegean islands from approximately 2,700 to 1,450 BCE. Their palace at Knossos was excavated beginning in 1900 by Sir Arthur Evans, whose multi-decade study, The Palace of Minos, published between 1921 and 1935, documented the most sophisticated residential architecture he had encountered in the ancient world. The palace covered nearly 5.5 acres and contained an estimated 1,400 rooms across multiple stories, rebuilt and expanded multiple times following seismic damage. The earthquakes that destroyed neighboring structures made Knossos more refined. The earthquake resistance was deliberate. Minoan builders embedded horizontal and vertical wooden beams inside their stone walls, a technique now called timber-laced masonry that allows the wall to flex during ground movement rather than crack and collapse. Stiros and Jones, writing in their 1996 study on archaeoseismology, noted that Minoan engineers had empirically arrived at a structural principle that European building codes didn't formally require until Eurocode 8 was written after the 1999 Athens earthquake. 3,700 years between the original discovery and its rediscovery, the hydraulic engineering was equally advanced. Minoan clay pipes tapered from one end to the other, so that each section socketed into the next, maintaining water pressure across elevation changes throughout the multi-story palace. Joseph Shaw's hydraulic studies through the American School of Classical Studies documented this system in detail. The tapering joint principle for maintaining pipe pressure wasn't formally articulated in Western hydraulics until the Renaissance. The Minoans tested it against desert-dry Aegean summers and got it right. The Minoans disappeared around 1450 BCE. The Thera-volcanic eruption, between 1645 and 1500 BCE, is the most cited cause. But archaeological evidence suggests Minoan culture continued for decades after the eruption before its abrupt end. Mycenaean Greek materials begin appearing in Crete's record around 1450 BCE. Neither explanation accounts for the erasure's completeness. And the most troubling thing they left behind is not a ruin, it is a script. Linear A. The Minoan writing system has resisted every attempt at decipherment for a century. Michael Ventris decoded Linear B, the later Mycenaean script that derived from it, in 1952. Linear A, the original, has defeated linguists, including Ventris's own collaborator, John Chadwick. We cannot read the Minoans' own records. We don't know what language they spoke. We cannot open their engineering manuals, their legal codes, or their history. A civilization that built earthquake-proof palaces with pressurized hot water 3,700 years ago left behind records we cannot access. And the people who replaced them, the Mycenaeans, either couldn't read them either or chose not to preserve them. Two possibilities. Both are troubling. Number 3. The Nabateans. The year is 100 BCE. You are standing in a canyon in the middle of a desert 60 miles from the nearest river. Rainfall here averages less than 2 inches per year. The sand around you has been dry for 9 months. And yet, through the narrow gorge ahead, a city opens up 30,000 people, fountains running in the public plazas, gardens in bloom, a bathhouse drawing heated water, and a reservoir the size of several city blocks reflecting a midday sun that would kill you in hours without shelter. The Nabateans did not find water in the desert. They manufactured it. The Nabatean kingdom controlled trade routes across modern Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the Sinai from approximately 400 BCE to 106 CE. Their capital, Petra carved from rose-colored sandstone cliffs, is the visible legacy. The engineering underneath it is the real achievement. Hydrologist Zayad al-Salamin, conducting surveys published through the Jordanian Department of Antiquities in the late 1990s, documented more than 200 cisterns, 40 miles of channels, a network of terrace dams, and a pressurized pipe system that moved water across miles of fractured desert terrain purely by gravity. The system captured everything: flash floods, seasonal rains, morning dew condensing on canyon walls. Nothing was wasted. Every drop was routed, stored, and redistributed. The pipe joints are where the engineering becomes remarkable. Nabatean clay pipes were tapered wider at one end so that each section fit into the socket of the next, maintaining hydraulic pressure across elevation changes without pumps or mechanical assistance. John Oleson, a historian of ancient technology at the University of Victoria who has written extensively on ancient water-lifting systems, noted that this tapered joint design prevents pressure loss more effectively than a straight-cut connection, and that the principle was not formally codified in Western hydraulic engineering until the Renaissance. The Nabateans arrived at it empirically, by building systems in terrain where failure meant the city died. Nemé and Villeneuve, reporting on their excavations in 1999, described the Petra hydraulic network as the most sophisticated water management system in the ancient Near East. Rome conquered Petra in 106 CE, absorbing the Nabatean kingdom as the province of Arabia, Petrea. They inherited the greatest desert water system ever built. The UNESCO Frontier of the Roman Empire study, conducted in 1995, found that Roman administrators maintained the monuments but not the hydraulic infrastructure at the standard required to sustain it. By 300 CE, sections of the channel network had silted up and were no longer being maintained. By the Byzantine period, Petra's population had collapsed. Rome managed what it could see and allowed what it couldn't fully understand to decay into uselessness. That is the standard explanation. Romans inherited an engineering system, misunderstood its maintenance requirements, and let it fail. But consider the inversion. Rome was the greatest engineering civilization of the ancient world. They built the Pantheon, the aqueducts of Segovia, the Pont du Gard. They held Petra for 3 centuries, with administrators, engineers, and soldiers. They could maintain their own infrastructure across thousands of miles. They couldn't maintain the Nabateans. The most charitable reading is simple incomprehension. They didn't understand how the system worked because its knowledge was oral, held by Nabatean specialists who died or dispersed after conquest. The less charitable reading is that they understood perfectly well and prioritized monuments over maintenance, knowing that a city dependent on infrastructure it can no longer sustain will empty out. Depopulation of a former rival capital was not an unwelcome outcome for Roman provincial administration. Modern Jordan still cannot supply equivalent water volume to desert cities without billion-dollar desalination plants and 24-hour electric pumps. The Nabateans did it with clay pipes and gravity. Why can't modern engineers fully replicate what hand tools built 2,100 years ago? Number 4. The Maya. The year is 800 CE. You are a Maya astronomer at Chichen Itza, and you have been watching Venus for 40 years. You have no telescope, no mechanical clock, no calculator. Your instruments are your eyes, a fixed horizon, and a series of stone slots carved into a tower that let you mark the exact moment a planet rises. Your records predict where Venus will appear in the sky 481 years from now, accurate to within 1 hour across that entire span. You are achieving a level of astronomical precision that European observatories will not match until the 16th century. Your life's work is written on bark paper in a book small enough to carry under one arm. In 1562, a Spanish bishop will burn it in an afternoon, call it lies, and receive a promotion. The Maya civilization developed across southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras from approximately 2000 BCE, reaching its classic period peak between 250 and 900 CE. Their astronomical achievements emerged entirely from systematic naked-eye observation across centuries, with no cross-pollination from Old World traditions. Anthony Aveni, an archaeoastronomer at Colgate University, whose 1980 work, Sky Watchers of Ancient Mexico, remains foundational, documented the precision of their records in detail. The Maya solar year calculation was 365.2420 days. The actual solar year is 365.2422 days. The error is 0.000, 2 days approximately 17 seconds per year. The Julian calendar, which governed European timekeeping for 1,500 years, accumulated an error of roughly 11 minutes per year. The Maya were an order of magnitude more accurate. The Dresden Codex, one of only 4 Maya books surviving European contact, contains Venus cycle tables that Floyd Lounsbury of Yale University analyzed in 1983 and found accurate to within 2 hours across 481-year cycles. The Maya had identified a drift between their calculated average and Venus's actual synodic period, built correction factors into the tables, and applied them systematically. That is not observation. It is mathematical modeling, the ability to distinguish a measured value from a theoretical one and correct for the gap. The Maya also independently developed positional zero by approximately 350 CE, centuries before Arab mathematicians carried the concept to Europe. Their long count calendar computed dates tens of millions of years into the past and future. It required zero to function. They didn't discover zero accidentally. They required it and derived it. Diego de Landa was the Franciscan friar appointed Bishop of Yucatan by the Spanish crown. In July 1562, at the town of Mani, he conducted what he recorded as an auto de fe, an act of faith. He burned an estimated 5,000 Maya objects, including an unknown number of codices. He wrote his own account in Relación de las Cosas de Yucatán in 1566. We found a large number of books in these characters, and, as they contained nothing in which there were not to be seen superstition and lies of the devil, we burned them all. He then proceeded, in that same text, to describe much of what he had destroyed: the calendar system, the astronomical cycles, the ritual structure. He needed the knowledge to write his book. He burned the knowledge to write his book. His name was Diego de Landa. He was recalled to Spain to face trial for his methods, then exonerated, then promoted to bishop. 4 codices survived. Of the thousands that existed before contact, 4. What was in the ones that burned? What agricultural techniques, medical knowledge, architectural plans, and mathematical discoveries died in Mani in 1562? A bishop burned 5,000 years of accumulated knowledge in a single afternoon. And the civilization he erased is still being called primitive in textbooks written 400 years later. Number 5. Ancient Egypt. The year is 2560 BCE. The Great Pyramid of Giza has just been completed. You press your palm to the white Tura limestone casing that sheathes the exterior. The joints between blocks are less than 0.02 inches wide, thinner than a credit card. The surface is smooth, almost polished. The structure rises 481 feet, the height of a modern 45-story building, and it will remain the tallest structure on Earth for 3,800 years. Modern engineers have studied it with laser surveying, satellite imaging, muon tomography, and ground-penetrating radar. After 2 centuries of analysis, they still cannot fully agree on how it was built, not approximately, fully. The precision achievements of the Great Pyramid are documented measurements, not legend. Flinders Petrie surveyed the Giza Plateau in 1881 and published The Pyramids and Temples of Giza, still the most comprehensive precision record ever compiled on the structure. The base is level to within 2.1 inches, across a footprint of 756 feet on each side. Modern laser leveling under controlled conditions achieves approximately 0.1 inches. The pyramid was built with plumb lines, water channels, and sighting instruments, and the result is 5 times more precise than what a modern contractor would guarantee without laser equipment. How that horizontal accuracy was maintained across 13 acres of construction remains, in engineering terms, genuinely unresolved. Kate Spence of Cambridge University, publishing in Nature in 2000, proposed the 4 sides were aligned to true north, south, east, and west with error under 0.05 degrees by tracking 2 circumpolar stars. The astronomy works. The engineering process that translated it into ground-level accuracy across a 13-acre footprint has not been identified. Inside the king's chamber, 34 feet long, 17 feet wide, lined with red Aswan granite, the temperature is a constant 68 degrees Fahrenheit, year-round. Regardless of external conditions, which at Giza range from below freezing on winter nights to above 100 degrees Fahrenheit in summer, no heating system, no cooling system, no ventilation beyond 2 narrow shafts. Mark Lehner of the Oriental Institute, University of Chicago, whose 1997 The Complete Pyramids synthesizes decades of fieldwork, offers no definitive explanation for this. It may represent a deliberate engineering choice. We do not know what mechanism produces it. Lehner's construction model 36,000 workers over 20 years, placing a 2.5-ton block every 2 minutes, 24 hours a day, satisfies the mathematics. The archaeology is less cooperative. No ramp system capable of servicing the pyramid's upper half has been found at sufficient scale on the Giza Plateau. No tool marks appear on the granite walls of the king's chamber. No inscription inside the original structure claims credit for its construction. No mummy has ever been found inside it. No treasure. Nothing was found inside the Great Pyramid except empty sarcophagus-shaped chambers and precision stonework, as if the structure's entire purpose was the construction itself rather than what it contained. The deeper problem is the absence of failure. The stepped pyramid of Djoser, built around 2650 BCE, is smaller and structurally simpler. The bent pyramid of Sneferu, built around 2600 BCE, visibly corrects its own angle mid-construction. You can see the moment the builders change their approach in the exterior profile. Then the Great Pyramid arrives, 2.3 million blocks, perfect alignment, tolerances we barely match today, and no comparable predecessor at this scale. You don't achieve that level of precision on your first attempt. You don't achieve it without failed prototypes, adjustment records, or engineering documentation. All of those are absent. One structure, appearing once, at peak performance. No inscription claiming credit, no explanation of how. Just the fact of it, standing in the desert, waiting for someone to figure out what we're looking at. Number 6. The Göbekli Tepe builders. The year is 9600 BCE. Agriculture does not exist. There are no permanent settlements anywhere on Earth. Humans live in mobile bands of 30 to 150 people, tracking game and moving with the seasons. They have no writing, no metal tools, no domesticated plants or animals. The standard archaeological model, built on 150 years of research, is unambiguous. Complex coordinated labor requires surplus food. Surplus food requires agriculture. Agriculture requires permanent settlement. None of those conditions exist in 9600 BCE. The chain is locked, and nothing should break it for another 3,000 years. And yet, on a hilltop, in what is now southeastern Turkey, hundreds of people are quarrying limestone pillars weighing up to 10 tons, raising them upright, and carving lions and vultures and foxes into them with flint tools, in precise geometric arrangements, at a level of artistic quality that implies craftsmen who have done nothing else their entire lives. Göbekli Tepe Potbelly Hill in Turkish was excavated from 1994 until 2014 by Klaus Schmidt of the German Archaeological Institute. Schmidt spent 20 years at the site before his death and called it the world's first cathedral hill. The excavated portion contains at least 22 circular enclosures defined by T-shaped limestone pillars up to 18 feet tall and weighing up to 10 tons each. The pillars carry high-relief carvings of animals, lions, foxes, boars, vultures, cranes, spiders, and abstract symbols executed with technical skill that implies dedicated craftsmen and specialized tools made and maintained purely for this purpose. Not occasional stoneworkers. Professionals. In a world where there were no professions. The standard model says this is impossible. Klaus Schmidt spent 2 decades demonstrating it wasn't, and before he died, he proposed a reversal that shook the foundation of archaeological theory. First came the temple, Schmidt wrote, then the city. Göbekli Tepe was not the product of an agricultural civilization that had developed enough surplus to build monuments. It was built by hunter-gatherers first, and the organizational demands of building and maintaining it, feeding the workers, returning to the site, coordinating labor across seasons may have created the pressures that forced the invention of agriculture. The cause and effect of civilization ran backwards. Stanford archaeologist Ian Hodder, writing on pre-agricultural social complexity, supported this interpretation. Göbekli Tepe demonstrates that cognitive sophistication, religious organization, and coordinated labor preceded the economic conditions we assumed were necessary to produce them. Ground-penetrating radar surveys by the German Archaeological Institute in 2003 and 2012 revealed that only approximately 5% of the site has been excavated. At least 16 more enclosures lie intact underground. The site is far larger and more complex than what has been exposed. Whatever is still buried may include structures more sophisticated than anything yet found. Then there is the burial. Around 8000 BCE, roughly 1,500 years after construction began, Göbekli Tepe was deliberately filled in, not abandoned and silted over by wind and time. Filled in. Enormous quantities of rubble and soil were brought to the site and used to bury the enclosures intentionally, covering thousands of tons of carved limestone under a human-made hill. This is why the site survived. The deliberate concealment created the accidental preservation. Schmidt was unambiguous that the burial was intentional. There is no evidence pattern consistent with natural accumulation. Someone chose to hide the most significant monumental complex on Earth at that moment in history, buried it thoroughly enough that it remained undiscovered for 11,500 years and left no record of doing so. We do not know who they were. We do not know what language they spoke, what they believed, what social structure sustained the project, or why they buried it. They vanished from history so completely that no descendant culture preserved any memory of what they built. Whoever built Göbekli Tepe rewrote the timeline of civilization and then erased themselves so thoroughly that we only found the evidence by accident in 1994. What else is still buried? Number 7. The Khmer Empire. The year is 1100 CE. You are standing at the edge of the West Baray in what is now Cambodia. 5 miles long, 1.5 miles wide, carved from flat flood, planed by human hands, without any powered machinery. It holds enough water to supply a modern American city of 500,000 people for 6 months. Behind you, the city of Angkor stretches in every direction: temples, palaces, canals, rice paddies, roads, neighborhoods across 400 square miles of organized, engineered landscape. It is the largest pre-industrial city on Earth. And every drop of water in it, from the reflecting pools of Angkor Wat to the irrigation channels feeding 1 million people's annual food supply, flows according to a hydraulic system of breathtaking precision. The Khmer Empire didn't just build a city. They built a working machine the size of a modern metropolis, and they ran it for 600 years. Angkor served as the Khmer capital from approximately 802 to 1431 CE. At its 12th century peak, it housed over 1 million people, the largest urban population on Earth, at a time when London held perhaps 50,000. The full scale of Angkor was not understood until Damien Evans of the University of Sydney applied LiDAR light detection and ranging aerial scanning to the region in 2012, published through the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2013. The LiDAR data revealed that Angkor's true extent was more than twice what ground-level archaeology had previously mapped. Canals, roads, temple complexes, and residential neighborhoods stretched far beyond the known monument zone. Angkor was not a palace with a city around it. It was a fully integrated metropolitan landscape. The hydraulic infrastructure Evans documented encompassed 1,000 ponds, 30 major reservoirs called barays, and a canal network managing the Mekong floodplain's extreme seasonal water variation, roughly 60 inches of rain between May and October, then near zero precipitation for 6 months. The Khmer system captured monsoon floodwater in the barays and released it gradually through canals to rice paddies during the dry season, sustaining year-round agriculture for 1 million people in a climate that would otherwise support only a fraction of that number. Roland Fletcher of the University of Sydney, who led the Greater Angkor project from 2010 to 2020, noted that the original Khmer hydraulic design was thermodynamically efficient, moving water by gravity through tiered reservoirs, requiring minimal maintenance, and distributing resources across the city with mathematical evenness. Angkor fell in 1431. The conventional explanation involves a Thai military siege. The LiDAR data and subsequent hydrological analysis told a different story. Brendan Buckley of Columbia University's Tree Ring Laboratory, publishing in 2010 based on monsoon reconstructions from tree ring records across Southeast Asia, documented that Angkor experienced an unusual sequence of intense monsoons in the early 15th century. The hydraulic system, in its late form, could not handle them. The key phrase is late form. The Greater Angkor project's analysis of the canal network identified extensive piecemeal modifications made over several centuries as successive engineers attempted to expand or optimize the system. Each modification introduced new stress concentrations. The later modifications were demonstrably less efficient than the original infrastructure. When the extreme monsoons arrived, the over-modified system failed catastrophically, flooding the city from within. The original Khmer engineers built something that worked for 600 years without significant failure. Their successors kept trying to improve it. Modern hydrologists reviewing the Greater Angkor project data concluded that the original Khmer hydraulic design was more efficient than everything built to replace it. An empire fell not to invasion, not to plague, not to drought, but to the accumulated consequences of engineers who could not leave well enough alone. There is a lesson in that. The most advanced hydraulic civilization in history was destroyed by its own certainty that it could improve on what it had already perfected. Number 8. the Hellenistic world. The year is 250 BCE. You are walking through the Library of Alexandria. 500,000 scrolls line the galleries of a building the size of a university campus, cataloged by subject, cross-referenced, and accessible to scholars from across the Mediterranean world. Every ship docking in Alexandria was required by law to surrender any scrolls it carried so the library could copy them before returning the originals. The Ptolemaic dynasty was systematically collecting every written text in the known world. In this building right now, the chief librarian has just calculated the circumference of the Earth to within 200 miles using a stick, a shadow, and geometry. Across town, a philosopher has argued for decades that the Earth orbits the Sunday, and 300 years from now, an engineer in this same city will build a working steam engine. All of this will be destroyed. Not once, 4 times, by 4 different powers, each with its own reason. Eratosthenes served as chief librarian from approximately 245 to 194 BCE. His calculation of Earth's circumference at 24,662 miles against the actual 24,901 miles represents a measurement error under 1%, achieved with no instruments beyond the known distance between 2 Egyptian cities and the angle of a shadow at noon. Aristarchus of Samos proposed heliocentrism around 270 BCE, the sun at the center, the Earth in orbit, the stars vastly more distant than anyone imagined. He was ignored and largely forgotten. Copernicus proposed the same model in 1543, citing Aristarchus as a predecessor. He received credit, not Aristarchus. The gap between the original discovery and its rediscovery, 1,800 years. Hero of Alexandria built the Aeolipile around 50 CE, a bronze sphere mounted on a sealed water vessel, spinning under steam pressure through 2 curved jets. A working rotary steam engine. Serafina Cuomo of Cambridge University, writing on Hero's mechanics in 2007, noted that Hero described it in his Pneumatica as an amusing novelty rather than a practical device. That categorization may be the most consequential technical miscategorization in history. James Watt built a functionally similar machine in 1769 and triggered the Industrial Revolution. Carl Sagan, in Cosmos in 1980, estimated that the destruction of Alexandrian knowledge set human scientific progress back by at least 1,000 years. Lucretius, in De Rerum Natura, in 55 BCE, described a universe of indivisible particles in constant motion and a world of species developing through selection over time. Atomic theory, proto-evolutionary biology, 19 centuries before Darwin. The library was destroyed at least 4 times. Julius Caesar's fire in 48 BCE during his siege of the city. The Emperor Aurelian's attack on the Bruttian district in 270 CE. Theophilus, Christian bishop of Alexandria, destroying the Serapeum in 391 CE under imperial orders to eradicate pagan institutions. The Arab conquest in 642 CE, accounting for whatever remained. Lionel Casson, in Libraries in the Ancient World, published in 2001, and Luciano Canfora, in The Vanished Library in 1987, each documented that the destructions were not accidental. Each was carried out by a power whose authority depended on controlling what its subjects could know. Caesar needed Alexandria's allegiance. Aurelian needed provincial compliance. Theophilus needed a monopoly on intellectual authority. The Arab caliph, reportedly, said books that agreed with the Quran were superfluous, and books that disagreed with it were dangerous. Not once, not twice. 4 times, 4 different civilizations chose the same target and made the same choice. Libraries don't burn 4 times by accident. If the Aeolipile had been recognized as what it was, a working steam engine in 50 CE, and developed accordingly, what year would the Industrial Revolution have begun? And who decided that question wasn't worth answering? Number 9. The Pre-Vedic Civilization. The year is 6,500 BCE. You have a toothache. Not a surface ache, a molar cracked by a tough root has exposed the pulp, and the infection is spreading through your jaw. A man sits you down in the Indus Valley settlement of Mehrgar, in what is now Pakistan's Baluchistan province. He has a flint-tipped drill the width of a sewing needle, fitted to a wooden shaft he spins between his palms. He steadies your jaw with one hand. In 9 minutes, he bores a clean hole through the enamel and removes the infected tissue. You do not develop sepsis. You live for another 30 years. The tooth shows no sign of renewed decay. This is not legend. This is evidence, confirmed in peer-reviewed literature, performed 4,500 years before ancient Egypt built its first pyramid. In 2006, Roberto Macchiarelli of the University of Poitiers published a study in Nature documenting 9 human molars recovered from Mergar with drilled holes. Radiocarbon and thermoluminescence dating placed them between 7,500 and 9,000 years old. The holes were smooth-bored rather than chipped, the signature of rotary drilling. Examination of the surrounding tooth surface showed no post-procedure decay, meaning the treatment worked, the patients healed, and the technique was clinically effective. These are the oldest confirmed examples of dental surgery anywhere on Earth, predating comparable Egyptian evidence by at least 3,000 years. The medical tradition didn't stop at teeth. Evidence of trepanation skull surgery involving deliberate removal of a section of cranial bone appears at multiple pre-Vedic and early Harappan sites. The critical archaeological marker for successful surgery is healed bone around the cut, showing the patient survived and recovered for months or years after the procedure. These markers appear consistently across the sites examined. Survival rates from ancient Indian trepanation, based on healed bone analysis, appear comparable to pre-antibiotic modern surgery, meaning a Harappan surgeon operating in 3000 BCE was achieving outcomes similar to a Western surgeon working in 1900 CE, without anesthesia, antibiotics, or sterile instruments as we understand them today. The Sushruta Samhita, compiled in its current form around 600 BCE, but drawing on oral traditions the text itself identifies as older, describes 300 distinct surgical procedures and 120 surgical instruments. Cataract surgery, performed by inserting a curved needle through the cornea and repositioning the clouded lens. Rhinoplasty, the surgical reconstruction of a nose using a skin flap from the cheek or forehead, with detailed instructions for shaping, suturing, and post-operative care. Dominic Wujastik of the University of Alberta, whose 2003 study, The Roots of Ayurveda, examined the Sushruta Samhita's surgical sections, noted that the procedural descriptions are specific enough to be followed today. They are not philosophical generalities. They are operating protocols. British surgeon Joseph Carpew published a paper in 1816 titled An Account of 2 Successful Operations for Restoring a Lost Nose. He presented it as a discovery, a new technique he had developed. He had read accounts of Indian surgeons performing rhinoplasty and replicated their method on his British patients. The Sushruta Samhita had described the procedure 2,400 years before Carpew's publication. He acknowledged the Indian source. In his paper, he called it the Indian method, then watched European surgical literature attribute the technique to him for the following century. The British Empire spent 150 years in India, documenting and importing its medical knowledge, systematically dismantling its medical schools and traditional institutions in the process, and then crediting the results to European science. The knowledge was taken, the source was erased. And the civilization that had performed successful brain surgery 9,000 years ago was filed under primitive for the next 200 years. Number 10. The pre-Columbian Amazon. The year is 450 CE. The Amazon is not a wilderness. It is a garden engineered over centuries by millions of people who have cultivated every acre of it, who know every plant by name and function, who have done something no other civilization on Earth has ever managed. They have changed the soil itself at a molecular level. Beneath your feet, the ground is black. Not the reddish-orange laterite that characterizes natural Amazonian earth, which is nutrient-poor and exhausted by farming within 2 or 3 seasons. This soil is dark, dense, alive with microbial activity, and rich with carbon laid down over generations by human hands. It will still be here in the year 2025, still black, still growing, and we still won't be able to fully replicate it. Terra preta dark earth in Portuguese is found in patches across the Amazon basin, some extending over 6,000 acres. It is not a natural formation. Bruno Glaser of the University of Bayreuth publishing in Naturwissenschaften in 2001, compared terra preta directly to surrounding forest soil and found it contains 70 times more black carbon, 7 times more organic matter, and 3 times more phosphorus. These are not incremental improvements. They represent a fundamentally different category of soil, created through the systematic addition of charcoal biochar, along with bone meal and organic waste, repeated over generations in a process that built carbon into the earth in a form that does not degrade. Regular Amazonian laterite exhausts after 2 or 3 crop cycles. Terra preta has been producing high yields for 2,000 years without any synthetic amendment. The property that no modern material scientist can replicate is self-regeneration. In areas where terra preta has been partially removed for use in gardens and agriculture, it is sold commercially in Brazil under the name black gold. The soil has been observed to regrow, spreading laterally, rebuilding its depth, restoring its composition over years and decades. William Woods of the University of Kansas, whose 2009 edited volume Amazonian Dark Earths synthesized decades of research on terra preta across multiple research institutions, noted that no synthetic soil amendment has ever demonstrated this property. Modern agricultural science can add nutrients to depleted soil. It has never created a soil that produces its own nutrients indefinitely and expands on its own. The pre-Columbian Amazonian civilizations did this. We do not know exactly how. Charles Mann's 2005 book, 1491, synthesized demographic research on the pre-Columbian Americas, and estimated 50 to 90 million people inhabited the Western Hemisphere before. European contact, a population comparable to Europe's at the time. The Amazon alone supported millions, sustained by engineered landscapes. The terra preta system raised field agriculture in seasonal flood zones, fish weirs, and managed forest gardens stocked with useful species. This was not a wilderness dotted with scattered bands. It was a densely populated, deeply managed civilization operating at continental scale. European contact after 1492 brought smallpox, measles, typhus, and influenza to populations with no immunity. By approximately 1650, 90% of the indigenous population of the Americas was dead, tens of millions of people, killed within 5 generations. The exact knowledge of how terra preta was made, the precise charcoal preparation methods, the biological activation processes, the layering schedules passed down through oral instruction died with the people who held it. Modern agricultural scientists have been attempting to reverse engineer terra preta since the early 2000s. As climate change produces more severe drought and soil degradation across tropical regions, a self-renewing, drought-resistant, fertilizer-independent soil becomes a survival technology with implications for billions of people. We have spent more than 20 years trying to recreate a soil that a pre-Columbian farmer made by hand 2 millennia ago. We have not fully succeeded. 10 civilizations, 10 achievements that equaled or surpassed what the modern world can produce. Urban sanitation, 4,000 years before the British Empire. Earthquake engineering, 3,700 years before modern building codes recognized it. Desert water manufacturing with gravity and clay. Astronomical precision that burned in an afternoon. A pyramid whose construction we cannot fully explain. Monuments built 11,500 years ago by people who shouldn't have been able to build them. A hydraulic city that fell to its own excellence. A library destroyed 4 times by 4 powers that knew exactly what they were doing. Surgery, 9,000 years old, stolen and renamed, and a soil that outlasted the civilization that created it by 2,000 years and counting. These losses were not random. They share a pattern knowledge that worked, that threatened something, and that disappeared in ways that are too complete to be entirely accidental. If any of this changed how you see what humanity has already been capable of and what it has chosen to forget, subscribe, leave a like, and let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from.